A tsunami hitting major cities on or near the Mediterranean Sea and in the northeastern part of the Atlantic Ocean is not a matter of if, but when. It is scary and surreal to think that places like Cannes or Barcelona could suddenly get slammed by a huge wave, but the fact is, European coastlines are in active tectonic areas. Only about 10% of all tsunamis worldwide happen in the Mediterranean, and there have been at least 290 tsunamis in this area since 1600 before Common Era. Despite the relatively low number, this phenomenon has caused numerous devastating disasters throughout Europe's history. Back in 1755, an estimated 8.5 magnitude earthquake with an epicenter southwest of Cape St. Vincent triggered a tsunami that destroyed most of Lisbon, the capital of Portugal. About 40 minutes after the earthquake, this massive wave just slammed into the harbor in downtown, racing up the Tagus River. The phenomenon was so fast that several people on horseback had to gallop to higher ground to avoid getting carried away. And this was just the beginning of a nightmare, with two more terrifying waves hitting Lisbon right after. A disaster like this is similar to what we see in the Pacific Ocean several times a century, but in the Atlantic, it's very rare. This type of major tsunami is expected to happen every 3 to 5 centuries, but now it could happen tomorrow. Marseille in France, Chipion in Spain, and other cities are on the list of important locations that could be flooded soon, with a roughly 100% chance of being hit by a tsunami in the next 30 years. Statistics show that the wave will probably be more than 3 feet high. I know, it doesn't sound like much, especially since when we think about tsunamis, we imagine terrifyingly tall waves, like the one that hit Lituya Bay in Alaska. In that case, the wave was over 1,700 feet tall. But we must remember that even waves only 19 inches high can be dangerous to swimmers, because it's not the height of the tsunami that matters, but also the flow and movement of the water. Not to mention the flooding, which can damage beaches, harbors, and streets. If the coastline has a small harbor and the waterfront is exceptionally low, like Cannes, this natural disaster might be much more dangerous. Tsunamis around 6 feet high can lift cars off the ground, while smaller waves can create walls of water traveling at 40 miles per hour. Plus, there are these smaller events that might not wreck everything, but still can cost a ton of money. For example, large sandbars that move around on the ocean floor, like sand dunes shifting in deserts. They can mess up pipelines or deep-sea cables for internet and communications, and that ends up costing businesses and governments millions of dollars. That's why organizations like UNESCO are worried about the possibility of a dangerous tsunami hitting Europe soon. So they're doing everything they can to prevent apocalyptic scenarios, like what happened in 2004 when an earthquake off the coast of Sumatra, Indonesia, caused waves over 100 feet high in coastal communities, resulting in over 200,000 lives lost. And let's not forget about 2011, when an earthquake off the coast of Tohoku, Japan, triggered a tsunami that reached about 6 miles inland and caused a major nuclear accident at a power station along the coast. Over 16,000 people lost their lives in that tragedy, and the event resulted in billions of dollars in infrastructure damage. These disasters were huge wake-up calls, and we've come a long way since 2004. We're much safer today, largely because the tsunami warning system is highly effective at quickly detecting this dangerous situation. Unlike many other natural phenomena, a tsunami can be anticipated. We may only have a few minutes to act, but if we all know what to do, many lives can be saved. And in most parts of the world, sirens are commonly used to alert people to tsunamis. To sound the siren as early as possible, initial tsunami alerts usually rely only on seismic data. First, specialists receive information about an earthquake. Seismic waves travel about 100 times faster than tsunamis, so they have enough time to analyze the data and see if the earthquake might have generated a tsunami and whether they should issue an initial tsunami alert. At U.S. warning centers, for example, scientists typically issue initial alerts within 5 minutes of an earthquake. If a tsunami is suspected, these alerts may also include information about wave arrival times, recommended actions, and potential impacts. But sounding the alarm is not enough. To save lives, coastal communities also need to be trained to respond fast and in the best way possible. That's why UNESCO produced this program called Tsunami Ready, aiming to train people living in coastal areas at risk on how to act in case of a tsunami event by the year 2030. The idea is to help communities stay safe by teaching them how to protect their livelihoods and safeguard their homes. Being recognized as Tsunami Ready by UNESCO doesn't mean a community is tsunami-proof, of course. It's more like a recognition that they have adopted all possible measures to mitigate tsunami risks. So authorities are helping communities to prepare themselves by installing evacuation signs, establishing security procedures, and creating plans to warn tourists. Like Spain, which distributed tsunami warning signs along the entire coastline, as well as signs showing evacuation routes to higher ground. And Spain better be prepared. I mean, only 7 tsunamis have hit the country since the year 365, so it's difficult to predict the effects of such an event. But they could be devastating, considering that Spanish coastal areas are so economically important. There's also a danger zone in the Averroes Fault beneath the Barents Sea. If an earthquake happens at this point, people will have only 21 minutes to escape a tsunami. UNESCO has also established 12 tsunami warning centers, which cover Europe as well. This initiative involves 5 centers located in the Mediterranean and Northeast Atlantic regions. These centers can save thousands of lives because they monitor ocean disturbances 24/7. Then, after analyzing the threat, they send out messages based on the event's potential to cause a tsunami. The intensity scale ranges from no effect to completely devastating. And by that, they understand that nearly all brick buildings could be demolished by waves, and even the most reinforced concrete structures could suffer heavy damage. Now, so far, we have mostly talked about tsunamis caused by earthquakes along converging tectonic plate boundaries. In fact, earthquakes have accounted for over 80% of tsunamis since 1900. But tsunamis can also result from landslides, volcanic eruptions, and even meteorite impacts. Experts are also worried that with the current changes in climate, we might see more of meteotsunamis popping up in the Mediterranean. These ones are triggered by freaky weather conditions and can mess with any coastline that's got a shallow seafloor. They might not be as huge or famous as the earthquakes ones, but they can still cause significant property damage and put people in danger. For instance, in 2006, a meteotsunami struck the harbor of Ciutadella on the Spanish island of Menorca. Yachts were tossed into each other and later stranded on the harbor floor as the water receded, resulting in tens of millions of euros in damage. Unfortunately, meteotsunamis in the Mediterranean tend to be stronger during summer, so if you're planning to spend your vacation in Europe, stay alert for any signs of dangerous waves. If you suddenly encounter a tsunami moving in your direction, remember this is the time to react. Move to higher ground as far inland as possible. Pay special attention to any emergency alerts and information, and follow the guidance of local authorities. Most importantly, do not wait around taking photos. Leave the area as soon as you notice any signs of this danger event, or if you hear an official tsunami warning. Hey, stay safe. So look at this narrow passage between the north of Morocco and the southern part of the Spanish region. It's called the Strait of Gibraltar. There are only 8 miles between the two continents, but for some reason, there's no bridge, despite people having been dreaming for centuries about connecting these two regions. There are places in the world where a bridge over water stretches for a much greater distance. For example, the Lake Pontchartrain Causeway near New Orleans, Louisiana, goes for 24 miles, which is 3 times the length of the hypothetical bridge between Africa and Europe. That's listed in the Guinness Book of World Records as the longest continuous bridge passing over water. It consists of 2 parallel bridges and connects the urban area of New Orleans with small settlements in the north of Lake Pontchartrain. 9,000 concrete piles hold more than 1,000 decks above the water. This large-scale structure was built in the middle of the 20th century. It only took 14 months from the start of construction to its completion. American engineers created a unique technology for attaching concrete piles to the base of the bridge, and this bridge is still functioning. So, what's the problem with building a shorter bridge to connect Africa and Europe? Let's first find out the value of the 8-mile bridge that could connect two continents and the reason why everyone is talking about it. In fact, the value of such a bridge would be enormous. Diamonds, oil, minerals. Africa is full of valuable materials, and Europe is happy to buy these things. This theoretical bridge could allow people to transport things for trade quickly and comfortably. But now, the exchange of goods between Africa and Europe is only possible thanks to airplanes and cargo ships, and airplanes are extremely expensive because of hefty fuel price tags. In addition, air travel is often delayed because of bad weather. There are long customs procedures and transportation from the airport to the destination. Ships can also be a problem. The narrow area of the Mediterranean Sea, where the two continents are closest to each other, is a dangerous place because of storms and strong currents. The transportation of your diamonds is highly dependent on weather conditions. The second advantage of such a bridge would be the creation of tens of thousands of jobs. People from Europe and Africa would build hotels, ports, parks, and even small towns for each other. The coastal parts of both continents would become a new economic center. And just imagine how much investment those places would attract. Europe and Africa would be much closer than ever before. You could drive from a small Spanish town to a safari park in northern Morocco, buy Moroccan tea, get some argan oil, and go home for the evening. Or you could take a high-speed train across the beautiful Mediterranean Sea. People would open hundreds of restaurants, amusement parks, shopping malls, and a museum next to this bridge. But, unfortunately, it's impossible to build such a bridge, at least at the moment. And here's why. The main problem is the Strait of Gibraltar itself, because of its strong currents and seismic activity. How can you start large-scale construction if, in a couple of days, an underwater earthquake can trigger giant waves and take all the ships underwater? Even if you build a bridge, rapid streams of water that constantly change direction can shake the entire structure and tear the connecting parts of the construction. The bridge over the Strait of Gibraltar must have a strong, sturdy system that will withstand seismic activity. Huge resources are required to create such a complex structure. Despite the dangerous passage between the two continents, it remains one of the busiest points in the world. It's the only place on the planet connecting the Mediterranean Sea and the Atlantic Ocean. About 300 ships pass through this area every day. Not only merchant ships, but also fishing vessels and tourist boats. There are not so many places in the world where you can watch whales coming out of the water. Not only people, but also marine creatures often visit this passage because of the peculiarities of the sea currents. But we'll talk about that later. Another problem is the depth of the strait. In simple words, any bridge over the water is built on long metal piles. Builders and engineers stick piles into the seabed and use them as a holding base for the whole construction. But installing such piles firmly enough is a difficult task because of the uneven seabed. The seabed has a unique geological landscape, irregularities, and different densities of the Earth's rock. There are also reefs, rocks, and pits. Any seabed requires extensive geological studies before piles are installed. However, the bottom of the Strait of Gibraltar is especially difficult because of its depth, almost 3,000 feet. It's one of the deepest straits in the whole world. Just imagine, you'll need the height of 10 Statues of Liberty to reach the surface of the water from the bottom of the strait. What kind of pile should be used there to hold the entire bridge? Most likely, one pile will have to consist of several parts connected into one large metal rod. And don't forget about seismic activity. Let's say you've installed perfectly strong piles, but the next day, an earthquake occurs and destroys the entire structure. And a strong current is carrying fortifications all over the Mediterranean Sea. The next problem is probably the most important one, because it concerns marine life. The Strait of Gibraltar has a high salt content. This natural element makes water heavier and makes it descend to the bottom of the deep Mediterranean basin. Then, this salt water pushes up cold water from the seabed into the Atlantic Ocean. These changes in water density, as well as fast currents, create sea vortices and turbulence. It's like a raging cauldron of cold water that raises a lot of nutrients to the surface. The hollows and hills of the Strait of Gibraltar are filled with different substances and sunlight, and this creates ideal conditions for the formation of phytoplankton. Whales, dolphins, and other marine creatures adore this delicacy. That's why you can see about 7 species of whales and dolphins in this place. What might happen to phytoplankton after the start of global construction? Carbon dioxide, crushed rock, tons of dust and ashes, falling building materials. All of this could significantly pollute the environment. Without phytoplankton, many fish would go extinct. Without fish, thousands of fishers wouldn't be able to get food and earn money. But even if the bridge was built, cars and trains would continue to pollute the air and water. This disruption of the delicate balance in this narrow strait can lead to larger-scale environmental disasters. Dolphins and whales may leave to look for food elsewhere, and thus take resources from other marine inhabitants. Like falling dominoes, one problem can follow another. And all this because of one bridge. In 2007, the Spanish Ministry of Environmental Protection introduced speed limits for all ships sailing through the strait in order to not disrupt the delicate balance of nature. At the beginning of the 20th century, a French engineer proposed a project of a bridge, but it was rejected because it was too complicated and costly. People also tried to develop a 23-mile-long tunnel, but this project also faced financial and technical difficulties. People are still dreaming of a bridge over the Strait of Gibraltar. Perhaps, in the future, when we develop cooler technologies, we'll be able to build this thing. Oh, by the way, there hasn't always been water between these two regions. In the distant past, the two continents were connected. The entire Mediterranean Sea is the remains of the Tethys Sea that existed before the era of dinosaurs. Then the African and Indian plates collided with the Eurasian one, and the Tethys Sea completely disappeared. In its place, a land bridge was formed that separated the Mediterranean Sea from the ocean. Without access to water, the sea dried up about 6 million years ago. But then, when the bridge came down, the water began to fill the dried-up pool. For tens of thousands of years, the narrow plate sank lower and lower, and the Mediterranean Sea eventually got its current water levels. July 17, 1998. It started like a usual quiet evening in the villages along the north coast of Papua New Guinea. Then, at 5:49 p.m., the ground shook violently. Suddenly, a 7.0 magnitude earthquake struck. It sent shockwaves through the region. Walls cracked, homes trembled, and the earth beneath the villagers' feet shifted and twisted. It lasted for 19 seconds, with a depth of 19 miles, and seemed like a typical earthquake. And while it caused some damage, this wasn't the kind of destruction that screamed doom. So, people were tricked. They thought it was over. They didn't know that the worst was still coming. Then some villagers noticed mysterious lights. It began with a flash of red light along the horizon, a streak that looked like fire. It appeared shortly after the initial earthquake, stretching across the northern sky above the ocean. It flared brilliantly, then vanished in an instant. What could it have been? People started speculating whether it's a warning about something or just sunlight reflecting strangely. But just as it disappeared, it was followed by a loud booming sound from the sea. No one knew what that meant, and some villagers went to the beach, curious to scan the views. What they noticed there chilled them to their core. The ocean looked wrong. The water wasn't calm. It churned, bubbled, and boiled in an eerie, unnatural way. That's when they saw it. A massive wave building in the distance, rushing toward them with terrifying speed. Panic spread like wildfire. People climbed trees, pushed boats into the lagoon, hoping to escape the approaching monster. Unfortunately, it was too late. The first wave hit with unimaginable force and swept away entire villages in an instant. The debris was scattered around, Trees were uprooted, buildings were displaced up to 160 to 200 feet inland. Even decades later, some of these affected villages can't be accessed by roads. At the same time, another strange phenomenon emerged. Many people described a red glow at the crest of the tsunami, as though the wave carried fire in its peak. They described an eerie glow as the wave approached the shoreline, a deep and unearthly hue, visible even from far-off places like Itape. And this was only the beginning. 2 more waves followed in quick succession. The second one was the most horrifying, from 33 to almost 50 feet high. By the time the ocean finally receded, the coastline was unrecognizable. After the waves had ravaged everything, leaving villages in ruins, the sky put on one final display. Survivors described a yellow or yellow-red glow illuminating the sky over the ocean. One man who survived by climbing up a tree saw the glow lingering over the horizon, stretching toward the direction of Arap and Itape. At Malol, the Sisters of the Mission looked out to the sea and were stunned by the surreal calm of the golden water. It was still as glass and lit by this unearthly glow. The glow was so vivid, it lit up the entire devastated landscape. Luckily, this allowed survivors to begin searching for their missing loved ones. A lot of people believe these lights were supernatural, an omen of sorts. This event ended up being catastrophic, sudden, and unpredictable. The Royal Australian Air Force responded immediately, sending in planes with relief supplies. People started an investigation. What exactly caused this disaster? Turns out, this tsunami wasn't like most others. Tsunami waves are very different from regular ones. We usually imagine huge breaking waves next to the beach. But they might first look like the water is rushing away from the shore. Stay vigilant because this is a warning sign. The water will come back very quickly and rise like a massive tide, often with devastating force. Rarely they come alone. They often arrive in a series, destroying everything along the coastline. They happen when a large amount of water in the ocean or big lake gets suddenly pushed out of place. The main causes are usually earthquakes, which happen when the Earth's tectonic plates shift suddenly under the ocean. They start lifting or lowering the seafloor, and this pushes the water above it, causing huge waves. This tsunami in Papua New Guinea was completely different though. At first, scientists thought that it was caused by the Australian and Pacific tectonic plates slipping against each other. But it turned out that the earthquake itself wasn't the problem. It really was pretty small. However, it had triggered a massive underwater landslide. When the seabed shifted, it pushed away an insane volume of water. The waves reached almost 50 feet high, like a 4-story building. That's how we realized that even small earthquakes can actually cause massive tsunamis via underwater landslides. What's even worse is that tsunamis like this can happen with little or no warning, simply because the earthquake alarms don't go off. But what about that bubbling and boiling of water that people saw? Turns out, this was the release of underwater gases. Beneath the ocean floor, there are pockets of gas trapped in the sediments. For example, methane, which is often found in oil and gas fields, or hydrogen sulfide, a gas that smells like rotten eggs. During the earthquake, the seabed probably cracked or shifted, releasing these gases into the water. This caused bubbling or boiling. The water might have heated in some areas. People mentioned that the waves felt hot and even stung their skin. The chemicals in it most likely made things even worse, irritating their skin. These gas eruptions might also have played a role in making the tsunami stronger. Maybe they were the ones that loosened the sediments that caused the underwater landslide, or pushed the water up when the gas escaped. It's like shaking up a bottle of soda. If the pressure releases suddenly, it causes a huge reaction. But what about the strange lights? Well, that's more complicated. There's a phenomenon called earthquake lights. They happen all around the world, flashes, glows, or aurora-like effects. Although they're usually white, bluish, or even multicolored, sometimes these lights last seconds, sometimes up to tens of minutes, at any point in an earthquake. If we go by their description, then the first red flash could have happened because of electricity. Earth's crust is full of quartz and similar stuff that can release electricity under pressure. When the earthquake shook the ground, all that electricity traveled up into the air. Gases from before could have helped here. They could ignite or interact with charged particles in the air, making the lights even brighter. As the wave continued to churn up sand, rocks, and debris, the intense pressure and movement could have released more sparks. This could cause the fire-like lights at the wave's crest that people noticed. Finally, the yellow light could have been all these electricized gases rising into the atmosphere. Methane and other gases interacted with Earth's magnetic field and created something like aurora borealis. But these are all speculations. The most heartbreaking part of the story is that tragedy in Papua New Guinea was preventable. Scientists knew the tsunami was coming, though it arrived earlier than they expected. The first wave struck between 10 and 25 minutes after the earthquake, about 5 minutes earlier than models showed. That means that it started somewhere close to the shore. The reason no one evacuated in time was simple. Local people didn't have a tsunami warning system or even enough knowledge about tsunamis to understand that an earthquake might lead to one, or why the water was acting weird. Things like that haven't happened in Papua New Guinea in over 60 years. But this was a wake-up call. From this immense tragedy came lessons and resilience. A year after the disaster, all the surviving locals watched a documentary that explained what had happened and taught them what to do if it ever happened again. This effort saved lives because the story did happen again. A similar earthquake and tsunami struck the nearby island of Vanuatu in November 1999. But this time, the villagers were ready. They remembered what they had seen in the film. Instead of panic, they acted quickly, and luckily, hundreds of lives were saved. Now, tsunami warning systems are everywhere in developed areas. They can send alerts to people via sirens, text messages, or broadcasts as soon as a potential tsunami is detected.
Around 5.3 million years ago, a crucial event reshaped the Mediterranean region. It was a colossal flood that refilled the local sea, which had been extremely barren and salty up until that point. It got the name Zanclean Flood, and it forever changed the geography of the area. The Mediterranean Sea is surrounded by Europe, Africa, and Asia, and connects to the ocean by the Strait of Gibraltar. This is quite a narrow passage, measuring about 8 miles. It may not be that wide, but the strait plays a crucial role in maintaining the liquid balance between these two bodies of water. About 6 million years ago, a bunch of things might have caused the Mediterranean to be cut off from the Atlantic Ocean. Some say it was an ice age. Others speak of tectonic movements, like earthquakes. Whatever the cause, it pushed the Mediterranean area into a period called the Mycenaean Salinity Crisis. For about 1,000 years, the sea slowly evaporated, leaving behind a dry basin that was several miles below sea level. This crisis really changed the landscape, creating conditions similar to those found in today's Dead Sea. What this means is that the lush Mediterranean beauty used to be a super salty environment, containing nearly 10 times more salt than the ocean. Say you could have visited. You would have been able to effortlessly float on the little water you could find, even if you're not a skilled swimmer. The amount of salt and that mineral content would have made it challenging for most creatures to survive. However, some hardy microorganisms, such as bacteria, could have adapted to these harsh conditions. These days, at the bottom of the Mediterranean Sea, we can find holes as large as the Grand Canyon, and they seem to have formed during that same period of dehydration. Evidence suggests that massive rivers, such as the Nile and the Rhone, flowed directly into the Mediterranean back then, leaving behind canyons as they reached the bottom, thousands of feet below the sea level. People had to find some sort of explanation back in the day for the drying of the Mediterranean, so they came up with myths and legends. One such tale was told by the people of southern Iberia, in modern-day Spain and Portugal. It was also recounted by a famous Roman writer called Pliny the Elder. What this legend said was that the Mediterranean used to be cut out from the ocean until the hero Hercules, with his mighty sword, carved a path. He did so between a fictional location in modern-day Africa and the Rock of Gibraltar. This allowed the ocean waters to flow in, transforming the Mediterranean into what we know today. Some fossils also seem to confirm the unusually large flood. Remains of marine organisms were found in layers high above current sea levels. This means the areas were once submerged underwater. These fossils belong to mollusks, fish, and marine mammals. Because of modern techniques, we now have at least an estimated timing of the Zanclean flood. Scientists used computer simulations to reconstruct the event, providing further evidence that it was real. What they also discovered is that there's a possibility the Mediterranean might change once more. The Strait of Gibraltar could close, most likely because of movements deep under the ground. This could lead to the Mediterranean becoming dry again, over a span of about 1,000 years. The Mediterranean area could disappear altogether if the African continent keeps shifting north too, getting closer to Europe. Another one of those famous yet still a bit hypothetical large floods is called the Black Sea Deluge theory. Some scientists think that around 8,400 years ago, water from the Mediterranean might have spilled over into the Black Sea through a narrow passage called the Bosporus Strait. This could have caused a massive disaster, forcing people living near the Black Sea to pack up their things and move further inside the continent, in both Europe and Asia. Along with them, they might have carried stories about this colossal flood. The specialist that came up with this idea also suggested that these migrating people might have brought along new ways of farming. Not everyone from the scientific community is convinced, though. Some argue that while there might have been a flood, it likely happened earlier and was way smaller. They didn't think this flood could have caused, for example, the story of Noah's Ark. In this legend, a spiritual man was warned by a higher entity that a giant flood was on its way. The man went to gather pairs of animals and pack them all in a boat to make sure these species would survive the devastating flood. There was also the concern among scholars that discussing real floods and ancient stories too much might blur the lines between science and fiction. There may be other reasons why these flood stories are so often found across different cultures all over our planet. One idea is that floods were incredibly destructive for early farmers, so they invented myths about them signaling the end of the world. Another idea is that people stumbled upon ancient sea creature fossils in unusual places, leading them to believe there was a significant flood in the past. The solution to future floods, though, might be floating cities. As sea levels continue to rise, coastal cities like Amsterdam, New Orleans, and Venice may go under. So, floating infrastructure may be the way to go, with buildings that can rise with the water levels, making them able to resist extreme weather too. Countries like the Netherlands, which have a history of managing water risks, are pioneering these floating creations. With cities running out of space for expansion, we might be forced to move on water anyway. By moving on the water, we can reduce crowding and create more interesting ways to feed ourselves, like floating gardens. These homes also come with great alternatives to our energy needs through systems that use solar and wind power. Not to mention that these homes might turn out to be cheaper in the long run. One such floating city might pop up soon in the Maldives. Its goal is to host up to 20,000 people and will feature places to live and eat, but also shops and schools. Designed to look like coral, the region will include canals placed between some 5,000 floating pieces of land. The city will be constructed using modular units, put together in a construction site nearby. After they're completed, they'll be towed to the floating city. The next step is to secure them to a large underwater concrete hull, which is screwed tightly to the seabed on some steel stilts. All these pieces of construction let the modular units easily move as naturally as the sea. Even for those that are afraid of seasickness, there's a solution. That's what the nearby coral reef is for. It will surround the city, making a natural wave breaker. Human-made coral banks will also be placed underneath the city, which will also help coral grow naturally. The long-term goal is to make the establishment self-sufficient. It will have electricity, mostly from on-site solar power. Waste will be treated nearby and reused as plant fertilizer. Instead of air conditioning, the city will use deep-sea water cooling. This method pumps cold water from the deep sea to cool the area, saving energy. Earth is not the only planet that's seen some serious floods. In ancient times, Mars seems to have experienced them too, and they played an important role in shaping its surface. Recent research reveals that billions of years ago, Mars was heavily affected by some serious river flooding, which contributed to the formation of its valleys and canyons. The reason for these floods was heavy rainfall, which reshaped the Martian landscape in a jiffy, at times even within days or weeks. Unlike Earth, where rivers form pretty slowly, Mars experienced rapid changes because of these floods, particularly around 4 billion years ago. We've known for quite some time that there have been floods on Mars, but this study really showed us their extent. We now know they were more widespread and frequent than previously thought.
Hey, can you lift a truck with your hands? No? Shocker. But let me introduce you to nature's original strongman, the ocean, which casually tossed 700-ton boulders around like they were pebbles during a mega tsunami that hit Africa thousands of years ago. This wasn't just a bad day at the beach. This mega tsunami was so powerful, it made the 2004 Indonesian and 2011 Japanese tsunamis look like kiddie pool splashes. Now, to give you an idea of how terrifying regular tsunamis already are, the Japan tsunami produced waves 133 feet tall. The Indian Ocean tsunami was slightly smaller, but it took over 200,000 lives across many countries. Now imagine something way worse. You see, for a long time, scientists thought waves that big were just science fiction. But then they found these enormous boulders, massive chunks of rock, flung far inland, and did the math. It turns out only waves around 800 feet tall could have pulled off that kind of rocky vandalism. And the culprit? A volcano that literally fell apart into the ocean and triggered one of the most powerful tsunamis Earth has ever seen. Usually, tsunamis are blamed on underwater earthquakes, tectonic plates getting into slap fights. But volcanoes? Oh, they've got tsunami potential too. In 1883, for example, a volcano in Indonesia named Krakatoa erupted for 6 months non-stop until it exploded, and the explosion was heard all the way in Australia. This triggered many tsunamis, some almost 100 feet tall. Still, that was more like a toe dip compared to the full cannonball from the mega tsunami. Back in ancient times, the volcano that crumbled during the mega tsunami was huge, and it didn't just fall apart. It lost a chunk that was 10 times the size of Mount Everest. 10 Mount Everests. It was like the Earth wanted to see what would happen if we threw a mountain into the ocean just for fun. It was so massive that when the entire side of the volcano belly flopped into the Atlantic, it created waves that could cover the Statue of Liberty 3 times. It also destroyed an island more than 30 miles away. The volcano behind this real-life Michael Bay scene was called Fogo, located on, you guessed it, Fogo Island. This island is basically just a whole single volcano that rose from the sea thanks to a magma hotspot, a place in the ocean where a lot of magma escapes and erupts like an underwater volcano. Over time, this magma cooled and stacked up like pancakes until, voila, after 7 major eruptions, the island popped out of the ocean like it was playing peekaboo. Surprise, it's a volcano. But Fogo's dramatic entrance was also a ticking time bomb. You see, the more a volcano grows, the heavier it gets, and if there's not enough magma inside it to support it, the whole thing can just collapse. Sometimes it doesn't take much. A minor earthquake, some erosion, or just a poor foundation made of soft sediment can trigger a collapse. It's like a really tall guy trying to balance over a bunch of marbles. Fogo had all the bad luck ingredients: too tall, too heavy, and built on squishy ground. And it gets worse. As the volcano grows heavier, it starts squishing the magma underneath. That lava can't rise, so it just simmers down there, slowly thickening like soup left on a burner for too long. Gases build up, pressure increases, and eventually, kaboom! It's the volcanic version of eating too many burritos and then trying to hold in a sneeze. This massive pressure and imbalance can trigger what's called a flank collapse, which is science speak for oops, half the volcano just fell into the ocean. That's what happened with Fogo. Most of the volcanic islands that form this way are long gone, but Fogo is still very much alive and kicking. In fact, it last erupted in 2014, and considering that it goes off every 20 years, maybe don't travel to Fogo Island in around 2034. For the longest time, scientists believe only big, bulky volcanic islands could collapse like this. But new research says that even smaller, skinnier guys, like the Danny DeVitos of the island world, aren't safe either. The thing is that small volcanic islands only seem stable because of their small mass. It's like Danny DeVito and Arnold Schwarzenegger both slipping on the ice. Arnie's fall might cause more chaos, but Danny can still go flying. And those little collapses? Yes, they matter. Take Santa Maria, a tiny island that's about 170 times smaller than Hawaii. It has collapsed multiple times, not because it wanted to, but because it's basically standing on soggy breadcrumbs. Its foundation is loose marine sediment, and to make things worse, it's sitting right next to the East Azores Fault, where 3 tectonic plates meet up for daily slap fights. This fault is responsible for many earthquakes and even some tsunamis that happened in Lisbon in the past, so you can imagine what it's like living right above it. Every time the volcano in Santa Maria erupts and grows, it also sinks. But when a chunk collapses, it bounces back up like a buoy. This seamount to island again roller coaster means that Santa Maria has popped in and out of the ocean like a submarine playing peekaboo. And with every peak comes a potential tsunami. Another volcano with similar trust issues is Pacaya, located in Guatemala. Between 2011 and 2013, scientists spotted strange movements in the soil, tiny shifts that suggested something underneath was getting restless. Sure enough, in 2014, Pacaya erupted. Luckily, it didn't collapse, but that risk still looms, especially if magma gets trapped in it like it did with Fogo. The consequences could be explosive, literally. In fact, about 1,000 years ago, Pacaya experienced a collapse that sent debris avalanches more than 15 miles away. Since then, it's rebuilt itself like a fiery phoenix, but it could still crumble again. That's why volcanologists obsess over the tiniest wobbles. It's not paranoia if the mountain really might fall. Now you might be thinking here, okay, but that was the past. Surely that kind of ridiculous mega tsunami collapse can't happen again, right? Well, welcome to the 21st century. Islands like Hawaii, La Palma in Spain, and various parts of the Caribbean are sitting on the same kind of geological whoopee cushions. All it takes is the right combo: loose foundation, steep slopes, maybe some trapped magma, and boom, flank collapse. In fact, it's already happened recently. In 2018, Anak Krakatau, the volcanic baby of the infamous Krakatoa, lost a big chunk of itself during an eruption. It caused a tsunami, but it was more awkward than devastating, like a volcano losing its pants on stage. Embarrassing, but survivable. But that's just amateur hour compared to history's real showstoppers. Ritter Island's 1888 collapse was so intense that the island literally got shorter. It went from being more than 2,000 feet tall to a mere 460 feet. But the record holder is the legendary Latua Bay megasplash from 1958, where a 7.8 magnitude earthquake triggered a massive landslide that sent a wave taller than the Empire State Building roaring through Alaska at highway speeds. Strangely enough, only 5 people lost their lives here, but on the other hand, the destruction path it left behind can still be seen today, all the way from space. Melting glaciers and ice caps can make volcanoes collapse too. When they melt, there's a sudden decrease in pressure on Earth's crust that can destabilize entire volcanoes. It's called isostatic rebound. It's like suddenly yanking a chair out from under someone who's been sitting still for centuries. Whoops. Also, here's something you probably never thought you'd worry about on your island getaway. Some volcanic islands grow outward as lava pours into the sea, creating unstable platforms known as lava deltas. These deltas can collapse without warning, taking newly formed land, and sometimes tourists too, right back into the ocean. No pressure though, just thought, maybe you want to stay off steaming new land. So yeah, next time you're lounging on a beachy volcanic island thinking, wow, this place is paradise. Just remember, it might also be a ticking geological time bomb with a flair for the dramatic. From ancient mountain-sized cannonballs to surprise lava deltas, volcanoes have a history of keeping things spicy. Earthquakes are a common thing in Japan. These natural disasters can reach a magnitude 9, where 1 is a light push and 9 can destroy entire cities. This happens because Japan is located on the Pacific Ring of Fire. It's like this. The entire surface of our planet is broken up into about 12 large pieces of the Earth's crust, and they're all moving slowly. In those places where these pieces meet, earthquakes occur most often. Japan is just at the point where the Pacific Plate collides with the plate of the Philippine Sea. This collision happens underwater and creates huge waves, and it could be much worse than just an earthquake. To escape from the water disaster, people built huge walls along the entire northeast coast. Not every earthquake provokes a tsunami. Many tremors occur when the Earth's crust diverges in different directions and creates gaps. It can destroy houses, streets, and forests. But such an underwater earthquake can't cause a tsunami. Huge waves are formed only when seismic activity causes the crust to move vertically up or down. The water pressure shifts at the very bottom, which generates a release of energy. This energy pushes the water and creates a tsunami. By the same principle, you can start little waves when you throw a stone into the water, and such vertical earthquakes often occur off the coast of Japan. First, a wave forms. It's gaining speed and increasing in size. Its height can reach about 40 feet, almost as tall as a 5-story building. It's approaching the coast and accelerating to 500 miles per hour. This is about the cruising speed of a commercial airliner. Millions of gallons of water weighing thousands of tons are getting closer. And now the wave is reaching the shore and demolishing everything in its path. Houses, trees, cars, nothing can withstand the destructive force of nature. A tsunami that was that strong covered the northeast coast of Japan in 2011. It changed the landscape of the beach and the seabed. These changes are the reason for another dangerous natural phenomenon: underwater vortices. Whirlpools draw in everything that is nearby. They used to build dams along the coastline to protect coastal villages, but the wave force easily destroyed these walls. That's why, after the disaster of 2011, they decided to create new large-scale protection in Japan. They spent more than $10 billion in several years on it. As a result, they created about 440 massive walls all along the coast. They combined these sections into one large dam, almost 250 miles long and 45 feet high. The construction is supposed to protect the coast against strong tsunamis. But still, the government has moved some coastal villages to higher terrain. They also ban building anything by the shore. Despite the protection it gives them, many locals aren't happy with the wall. It's a huge problem for the fishing industry. The wall blocks access to the ocean, so ships and boats can't dock at the shore. Some people are unhappy that their windows now face the concrete wall instead of the blue ocean. The money spent on the wall could have been spent on moving even more houses. Residents have concerns the wall only creates an illusion of security. A giant wave can crash into it at great speed and break it into pieces. And these concrete parts can cause even more destruction. Some scientists agree with this opinion. Most experts aren't sure the wall won't give 100% protection, but it can help delay the flood, giving people more time to evacuate. In such situations, every minute counts. It's impossible to predict the earthquake occurrence accurately. But when it starts, the sensors can calculate how much time it would take for the wave to arrive at the shore. For example, the last time a tsunami warning was given 5 minutes after the earthquake. Any big wave is moving at great speed and may be very close to the shore. It seems people almost don't have time to save themselves from a tsunami. Fortunately, the citizens of Japan are ready for this. They regularly take part in tsunami evacuation drills. They learn how to act correctly during a coming flood. They have a plan of action that can save their lives. All that, along with a wall, increases the chances of surviving a catastrophe. Not only tsunamis are formed around the shores of Japan, the power of water here often meets the power of fire. In 2010, a few hundred miles south of Tokyo, near the island of Iwo Jima, a heavy low rumble came from the depth of the sea. Then a million bubbles moved to the surface. The water started heating up and boiling. Its temperature was so hot that you could poach eggs in it. The hot area grew to the size of a stadium. All this was accompanied by a huge amount of superheated steam filling all the air around. Then pieces of soil came out from the water. At this point, it was all over. The water cooled down, the ocean surface became calm again. On that day, an underwater volcano erupted. No catastrophe occurred, but in 2021, this happened again. Japan's Coast Guard warned of strong volcanic activity in the region. Hot steam and gases from the volcano's mouth burst out of the water and rose into the air to a height of 10 miles, which is about twice as high as the top of Mount Everest. A huge volcano woke up and began to rise slowly from the surface. If you look at this place from above, you can see that it's not just a volcano, it's a whole island shaped like a horseshoe. Seismologists say this volcanic island is just the tip of the iceberg, as they mix their metaphors. There is still a lot of volcanic space under the water. The island fills the air with gas and ash. The sky turns gray. Scientists continue to monitor the volcano, but they don't know what consequences this may lead to. Such eruptions of underwater volcanoes are not uncommon off the coast of Japan, but the event itself is unique. Underwater volcanoes don't explode and don't release lava flows upwards. A huge amount of water above them creates high pressure. As soon as the magma gets out, the water immediately presses it to the seabed. Millions of gallons of lava sink, cool down, and solidify around the volcano. This lava forms a thick layer of Earth's rock. Most underwater eruptions don't cause any changes on the ocean surface, but to make an island appear on the surface, a volcano needs a lot of magma. The next volcanic eruption creates another thick layer of it. Millions of years pass, and flows of lava form mountains. Constant eruptions increase the seabed height. Layer by layer, the cooled lava rises higher and higher, and then one day it appears on the surface and turns into an island. So, in 2013, a small piece of land appeared next to an existing island. Emerging from the water, the volcano began to grow slowly and eventually connected with the island. The area of this island increased by 12 times after 2 years. Vapor is always pouring out of this island, and its surface is filled with super hot lava flows. The volcano behaves unstable, and nobody knows when it's going to calm down. Once, people built a small town on a similar island. This place still exists today. It's located south of Tokyo and is called Aogashima. People are not too worried about the possibility of a catastrophe, despite the fact the last time a volcano erupted here was in May 1785. I wasn't around then. By that time, people had already built a city and lived there. Then, one sunny day, thousands of birds suddenly took off and left the island. Then the ground began to shake. A heavy, low sound came from the island depths. Streams of gas rushed from the top of the overgrown forest volcano. The volcano threw dirt and large stones into the sky. The eruption wasn't quick. It lasted several weeks. More than 200 years have passed since then, and the volcano is still sleeping. They rebuilt the city. Now this place looks like a dream. That's probably the reason why people don't want to leave it. Despite the risk of a new eruption, they continue to live and work here. There are many thermal springs. The island also has rich soil, and the waters around are full of fish. The volcano may wake up at any moment. Fortunately, meteorological and seismological services monitor the volcano activity. So, any guesses? Imagine a 10-story high wall of water with a foamy white peak smashing into the shore. That's the mental image we all have when we think of tsunamis. But is it accurate? And if it is, why don't daredevil surfers ride them? That's a huge wave begging to be caught. Fear of heights, top speeds, because they choose life? Don't want to smack right into a building when that thing crashes into the shore and floods through the streets? But they're supposed to be daredevils. And how cool would it be if you, with your cheeks flapping in the wind, could ride that tsunami right into your 10th floor apartment? Just don't forget to leave the window open when you head out. No, seriously, where would anyone get the idea to surf a tsunami? I know where. Movies. All those disaster flicks depicting tsunamis as monstrous waves. It's like they cut that wave from a summertime fun surfer movie, pasted it into their own, and blew the image way up. And don't forget about that blue-gray filter. There we go, our disaster tsunami blockbuster is ready. Leave it to the filmmakers to overlook the details. Realistically, the difference between tsunamis and surfing waves is as ridiculously huge as that movie wave about to take out that skyscraper. You can surf on a massive wave, as long as it's the right kind. And that surfable kind can even be bigger than tsunamis. Some surfers ride them every year, but I'll get into that a bit later. So, what is the difference between this right kind of wave and tsunamis? Well, in surfing, every wave has a face or wall. That's the sweet spot each surfer looks for to ride down from. Like going downhill on a snowboard, only you aren't strapped to the board and there's always an avalanche behind you. And there could be sharks right under your feet, waiting to clean up whatever's left of you when you wipe out. Sorry, that got a little, terrifying. Surfing's fun, but I'll watch from the beach, thanks. Tsunamis aren't like this at all. Imagine a tsunami more like a giant tide that comes in a matter of minutes. Yes, the water will likely rise 30, sometimes 60 feet higher than it usually does. But it won't do it as a wave with that much needed wall. It'll be something like a hill of water that rolls in. Think of it like a giant gloopy lava traveling over the shore, only faster. No, even faster. Wait, that's even more terrifying than the shark thing. Never mind. For a normal surfable wave to appear, all you need is the wind to blow. Tsunamis, however, are born by some relatively rare events like earthquakes and underwater volcano eruptions. This is also where the difference in force is coming from. Tsunamis aren't always bigger than regular waves, but they are much more powerful. So every time they come, they tend to bring disaster with them. When an underwater earthquake happens, it produces unbelievable amounts of energy that literally punches the water. This energy has to go somewhere, and that somewhere is towards the shore in the form of a tsunami. In fact, next time you're doing the dishes and in need of some fun, you can make your own mini tsunami. Just place your hand fully underwater and move it up and down, even just a little bit. You'll see ripples on the surface. This is what happens in the ocean after an earthquake, but on a much larger scale. Tsunamis gain incredible speed from the ocean bed moving or shifting up to 200 miles per hour. So those things hit land going as fast as an arrow through the air? Well, that's why I said cheeks flapping in the wind as you ride that gnarly wave. But no, seriously, they aren't going nearly that speed when they crash onto the shore. They lose a lot of that energy as they meet the rise of the ocean floor near the coastline and any underwater obstacle in their path. When you surf into your apartment window, you'll only be going about 30 miles per hour. They might slow down, but the wave grows bigger as it gets closer to the coast. Mega tsunamis are those 100-footers that'll get you into your 10th floor flat. The average height for most is only about 10 to 30 feet. Yeah, only. Compare that to a normal surfing wave. It's usually 6 feet high and only goes about 13 miles per hour. That's why tsunamis are still fast and big enough to cause major damage. But the surfing ones are no walk in the park either. Those kinds can be dangerous too. Just like tsunamis, wind-driven waves will rise when they hit an underwater obstacle near the shore. This obstacle, be it an underwater ridge or coral reef, is the main source of danger for surfers. If a surfer can't hang, they'll be dragged into the deep where sharp reefs lie. That and hitting the water doesn't exactly feel like a gentle pat on the back for a job well done. Okay, I get it. You can't surf a tsunami. But we're in what-if territory, where the rules don't apply, and my imagination likes to run wild. So let's have some fun tackling this challenge. First things first, since the tsunami isn't a usual wave, we need to find a way to turn it into a surfing spot. You know, somehow get it to form a wall. One thing that could work is an artificial obstacle under the water that'll be specifically designed to strip the tsunami of its monstrous energy. Sorry, we'll lose some of that epic speed, but we need to make it rise higher. The obstacle will have to be a massive structure, but still deep enough that our surfer doesn't bog his head if he wipes out. Next, we need to take further safety measures. In this case, some sturdy gear. Typical surfing wetsuits are made of neoprene, a flexible material that can protect you only from cold water and help you stay afloat. But lucky you! A new technology recently emerged, a wetsuit that can resist a shark bite. It's like Kevlar vests in a way. All the tests show that it can't be punctured with sharp objects, and it prevents bones from breaking. Unfortunately, bruises from blunt impact are inevitable. It's tsunami surfing we're talking about after all. And finally, the board itself. If riding a normal surf wave is a fair challenge of your sense of balance, then keeping yourself on that board while riding a tsunami might just be impossible. Remember what if? Okay, let's throw some stabilizers on that bad boy. There, now you're ready. You're ready, aren't you? Don't chicken out on me now. Come on, people have done this. They do it all the time in Nazir, Portugal. Well, they don't surf tsunamis, of course, but big wave pro surfers go there every year to challenge Nazir swell. And this 30-foot tsunami you're about to ride is just a pup compared to the biggest wave ever surfed. It was 80 feet high, more than twice the height of a telephone pole. Brazilian pro surfer Rodrigo Coja broke this record in 2017. Maya Gabeira set the women's record by conquering a 68-foot wave in 2018. And I don't think that's the limit, because waves in Nazir can reach 100 feet at times. Hey, the reason why waves in Nazir are so big lies deep underneath the ocean surface. This place has one of the largest underwater canyons in Europe. It's a 140-mile-long, 3-mile-deep gash in the seabed that pushes insane amounts of seismic energy to produce massive waves by the time they hit the shore. The canyon alone triples wave heights here, but there's also strong ocean currents and powerful swell winds in this region. So, it's like the perfect storm for surfers who like a real challenge.
Ah, beautiful. You're walking with your friend and look up at the sky. The sun looks a bit different today, like it has some kind of ring around it, a rainbow type thing. Huh, look at that. Your friend pulls his head up out of his phone. You shouldn't look directly at the... Stop everything, he says. It's a sun halo. We need to find shelter now, unless you have the world's biggest umbrella on you. A sun halo is nature's sign that there's a snow or rainstorm on its way. It's caused by clouds that are made of bazillions of small ice crystals. Sunlight goes through those crystals, which causes the light to split and refract, like when there's a rainbow. Now, don't look at the sun halo directly. It's going to be tempting because it's not something you see every day. Plus, it's really beautiful. But ultraviolet light can burn the exposed tissue of your retina and cause serious damage, so it's not worth it. Grab some sunglasses and you're good to go. This phenomenon lasts around 40 minutes. These clouds are the same ones that can cause a spooky ring around the moon at night sometimes. In June 2020, what the people were looking at was an anvil cloud, a rare storm formation in the sky. Formed when strong air currents carry water vapor upwards, the air expands and spreads out as it hits the bottom of the stratosphere. It pushes the dense cloud into the cool anvil shape you see, and sometimes it even gets to be a mushroom. Anvil clouds produce some of the most dangerous lightning of all storms, one that's called a bolt out of the blue. This lightning strike seems to magically come out of the blue sky, with the storm being many miles away. This type of bolt comes from the top of the anvil and can be 10 times more powerful than a typical lightning strike. People got so frightened after witnessing a giant cloud that they thought something terrible must have happened. The locals had pictures of the large billow on social media before officials could explain what was going on. Authorities managed to calm everyone's fears by informing them it was nothing more than a natural phenomenon, and a beautiful one at that. Before dissipating, these clouds typically stay in one area, regardless of how strong the wind is. If you look off the western coast of France, you'll see the Isle of Ré. Thanks to its beautiful blue waters, clean sandy beaches, and stunning lighthouses, this place is a very popular vacation spot. But perhaps the coolest part about the island of Ré is what you see just beyond the shore: square waves. This strange wave pattern looks like a giant chessboard over the ocean. Many visitors to the island become captivated by these waves and go to high-up places like nearby lighthouses to take pictures of this natural phenomenon. They say that when looking down at these square patterns in the water, it's almost as if there's some sort of metal grid underneath it. And while these wave patterns are truly fascinating, the people who choose to enjoy them from afar are doing it right. They know to stay out of the water. To understand how these square waves come to be, it's important to know how waves occur in the first place. Generally, waves can travel many miles over the surface of the water, depending on local winds and weather. And even on days when the weather seems somewhat calm, storms located elsewhere can send in crashing waves that affect the surrounding calm waters. When waves travel onto the shores of distant lands, they're called swells. This is different from a wave that occurs from local wind. When two different swells coming from opposite directions meet, it's known as a cross sea. This is what generates these square waves you see near the Isle of Ré. While these waves are one of the reasons why people flock to this island, they can still expect to enjoy calm, relaxing waters most of the time. The cross sea only occurs during certain times of the year in specific weather. Plus, it's common knowledge around Ré to steer clear of the ocean when these square waves appear. So it's not often that you hear about anyone getting caught in them, because most people know better. And since a lot of people on the island are tourists, there are plenty of signs around warning them to get out of the water during this time. However, not everyone gets the memo. There have been a handful of cases where people got caught in the cross sea, but thankfully and luckily, they managed to get out safely. These square waves have become somewhat famous over time, given that there's really no other place in the world that boasts a cross sea like this one. In fact, no one has ever spotted square waves anywhere but the island of Ré. However, there are swells that can be found throughout the oceans in the world, and a cross sea can take place. But if the angle they approach each other at is more shallow, the wave may actually look like it's coming from the same direction, even when it's not. Not to mention, swells can slowly lose momentum as they drift further and further away, so their crest, or the top of the wave, appears more round and less jagged. The island of Ré's specific wind and weather patterns are literally the perfect storm and create a cross sea that people can clearly recognize. It's 2009 in Italy. A man was hanging out in his kitchen. Then he saw some flickering lights. He knew just what to do. He moved his family to a safe place, A couple of seconds later, a massive earthquake hit the whole region. His family survived thanks to his quick reaction. He knew these flickering lights were actually a sign of an upcoming earthquake. People have been seeing these mysterious lights for ages. Some thought it was some kind of sign coming from space. Scientists never used to take them seriously, but after the invention of photography, more and more evidence of these strange lights appeared. Soon, they realized the connection. The lights appear, and pretty soon, the earthquake hits. After a bit of digging around, they actually found some records of these earthquake lights from hundreds of years ago. There were bluish flames coming out of the ground right before an earthquake. Oh, creepy. The Christmas Island crab is part of an amazing phenomenon once a year. Their migration period is determined by the phase of the moon and the first rainfall between October and February, although the precise date can't be predicted. Once the crabs have been prompted, they leave their homes amongst the forest and migrate in massive hordes towards the sea. Numbering in millions, a sea of red crabs is observed as they make their journey across the island, creating roadblocks and making their way to the ocean. There, they lay their eggs and then make their trek back, returning to the forest until the next year. There are bridges in the Indian state of Meghalaya that are created entirely of living tree roots. The bridges are made up of tangled, thick roots that are strong enough to hold over 50 people at a time. The Khasi and Jaintia tribes became masters in the art of growing these insane bridges. They need them to cross the streams below with ease. Some of these root bridges are over 180 years old. To make them, the members of the tribes care for the roots until they grow long enough to reach the opposite bank. It can take as long as 10 to 15 years to grow a bridge. In the process, the roots become tightly entwined with one another. This is how the bridges get so strong. And once a bridge is fully grown, it can last for over 500 years. While some roots decay, new ones are continually growing. That's why the unusual natural constructions last so long. Light pillars are colorful beams of light that either jet up from Earth towards the sky or shine down from the clouds. Usually, they only occur in cold temperatures, as they form when the sunlight gets reflected off ice crystals floating in the air. The higher the crystals are in the air, the taller these bright and colorful pillars become. They're most common at sunrise and sunset. There are hidden caves all over the world that are filled with glowing light. This light comes from hundreds of glowworms that have made a cozy home in the caves. Some of the caves are more than 30 million years old, and most of them can be found in New Zealand and Australia. The worms themselves don't actually glow, but baby worms, called larvae, form silk strings made out of mucus. These strings form nets. It's these nets that can illuminate the entire cave. Their purpose is to attract flies and other tasty insects for the glowworms to munch on. Rainbow trees are 100% a real thing. Hailing from the Philippines and Indonesia, these colorful wonders are called rainbow eucalyptus, or rainbow gum. The rainbow hues are created by the contrast in colors of old and new bark. As the thin surface layers of bark peel away, they reveal newer ones with brighter, more eye-catching colors. The brand new bark is green. Then it changes to purple, then red, and finally brown. This is because the trees contain a substance called chlorophyll. It makes the bark green. As each strip of bark ages, it loses chlorophyll and slowly changes its color.
In 1945, 5 TBF Avenger aircraft took flight for a routine training exercise around the Bermuda Triangle. In the middle of the exercise, the planes were struck by intense rain and heavy winds, despite the clear weather forecast. The pilots became extremely disoriented and radioed the base to report that their navigational equipment had stopped working. The last thing the base heard was, "When the first plane drops below 10 gallons, we'll all go down together," and then static. The 5 planes and their 14 crew members were never seen or heard from again. On his very first voyage to the New World in 1492, Christopher Columbus sailed through the Bermuda Triangle. Columbus reported that one night, when he was on the deck of the ship, he noticed a giant light appear in the distance, unlike anything he had ever seen before. Columbus looked at his compass for direction, and it gave off erratic readings. You might have noticed that the Bermuda Triangle doesn't appear on any world map. This is because official institutions refuse to acknowledge that the area actually exists. A popular theory suggests that rogue waves are responsible for the many disappearances. Rogue waves are called extreme storm waves by scientists. They occur when different weather patterns take place at the same time and cause large, unexpected waves. Witnesses say that the waves look like giant walls of water. These waves could explain why ships go down fast and without leaving any trace. The Bermuda Triangle is home to some pretty intense and unexpected weather. Storms build up quickly and unexpectedly, then disappear soon after. If you blink, you might miss it. This could explain why few distress signals are issued. Pilots and sailors never saw the weather coming. No one knows exactly how many ships and planes have disappeared in the Bermuda Triangle. The rough estimate is 50 ships and 20 planes. Most of the time, the disappearances had no explanation and no wreckage has ever been left behind. Another bizarre theory trying to solve the Bermuda Triangle mystery comes from Charlie Berlitz. He insists that the area is home to the lost city of Atlantis. The missing ships and planes and malfunctioning equipment, according to him, were all caused by rays of energy let out by the special energy crystals that power Atlantis. While this sounds silly, Berlitz's theory was convincing enough that over 20 million people bought his book worldwide. In the year 1800, a large sailing vessel called the USS Pickering departed from the U.S. on its way to the West Indies. The ship sailed into the Bermuda Triangle along with its 90-man crew and was never heard from again. The USS Pickering was the first ever confirmed ship to vanish in the Bermuda Triangle. It's believed that the ship was taken out by a storm, but because no wreckage was ever found, we'll never know for sure. When the TBF Avenger planes went missing, a massive search operation was conducted. Boats and planes searched the Bermuda Triangle for any signs of the aircraft. One of the boats searching was a PBM-5 Mariner airboat. The airboat took flight at 7:27 p.m. and called in a routine radio message 3 minutes later. Then, it was never heard from again. No trace was ever found of the rescue airboat or the 5 Avenger aircraft. An enormous investigation was launched into the disappearance of all these vehicles, but nothing was ever discovered. This particular area of the ocean is one of the most heavily traveled shipping routes in the world. Some skeptics believe that this fact solves the mystery. Statistically, the busier the area, the higher the frequency of accidents and disappearances. While this makes sense, it's not the frequency of disappearances that's responsible for the mystery of the Bermuda Triangle. It's the lack of explanation or wreckage found. On the ocean floor, decomposing organisms let off large concentrations of methane gas that gets trapped under the water. This gas can build up until, boom, it ruptures. The gas surges up to the surface and erupts. If a ship was in the area of one of these ruptures, the water would become much less dense and cause the ship to sink rapidly and without warning. Scientists believe this could be the cause of the many disappearances in the Bermuda Triangle. While this theory makes a lot of sense, it doesn't seem too likely. The U.S. Geological Survey has stated that no large releases of gas are believed to have occurred in this area for the past 15,000 years. The ocean floor is made of rocks containing a lot of magnetite. It's more like iron. Magnetic fields react to high concentrations of magnetite on the ocean floor, which may start a sort of conflict between the two. It can often lead to various weather anomalies and, as a result, navigation issues. And, naturally, any changes in the ocean floor or the Earth's magnetic fields influence the Bermuda Triangle a lot. Since the magnetic field is constantly moving, it might be also taking the Bermuda Triangle with it. Now that people know where the triangle is, it's easy to avoid it. It supposedly moves eastward together with the magnetic poles. but scientists still can't answer where exactly it will be in a couple of years. Some people blame all the disasters on the extraterrestrial paranormal activity. Others suppose it's all about raging natural phenomena. There's another triangle in Lake Michigan. Just like the one near Bermuda, the Michigan Triangle got its shady reputation for some disappearances. The first recorded one dates back to 1679. A large vessel, one of the largest of that time, set out on an expedition, yet once it got in the sinister triangle, it never came back. Much later, an aircraft disappeared in this triangle. The skies are usually very clear there, but back in 1883, some people witnessed abnormal things in the area. Some claim to have seen large blocks of ice falling from the skies, and the crew even managed to save one as hard proof. Meanwhile, the Pacific Ocean Mystery Area is another sinister triangle. Off the south coast of Japan, not far away from Tokyo, there's a sea where plenty of ships met their doom, disappearing without a trace in these waters. They call it the Devil's Triangle. Some scientists believe the cause of anomalies is the environmental changes. Also, there's a really high concentration of methane hydrates on the bottom of the ocean in the Pacific Triangle area. You're deviating from your original course and sailing in the wrong direction. There's the Caribbean Sea near the triangle, peppered with small islands. The seafloor here isn't deep. The ship can get in shallow waters. And now the ship is stuck on a shoal, and you have no idea where you are. If this were the 21st century, the ship's captain would be able to reach the shore using GPS and other modern navigation. But the most interesting thing is that the compass would work correctly this time, since the magnetic North Pole hasn't already coincided with the true one for a long time in the territory of the Bermuda Triangle. The agonic line is somewhere far away from here. There are no problems with navigation now, but for some reason, this is where ships disappear. In fact, not just here. Throughout the Atlantic Ocean, there are places where many more ships were gone. The Bermuda Triangle is not even in the top 10 of such places. One of the main reasons why many ships are lost here is that one of the most popular shipping routes in the Atlantic passes through the Bermuda Triangle. And the more ships in one place, the more shipwrecks. Simple probability. Then, it just starts getting weird. Other theories say that there's a space-time rift in this region. Ships and planes fall into this rift and end up in the past or the future. But for some reason, there's not a single proof of this myth. There's no reason to think that the rift is hidden somewhere here. The base of an extraterrestrial civilization is located in the Bermuda Triangle. Visitors from other galaxies steal sea vessels along with the crew, so no one finds the wreckage of the ships. This is also a popular myth that has no scientific justification. The Kraken lives somewhere in the triangle. It's a huge squid that sinks ships and also is a legend that sailors tell each other. However, gigantic squids live in the depths of the ocean. They can grow to the size of half a train car, but no cases have ever been recorded where they sunk a large vessel. And in the area of the Bermuda Triangle, they have never ever been seen. People in the past didn't know about the existence of these creatures, so when they saw them for the first time, they described them as huge, terrible monsters. Giant squids are some of the most elusive creatures on Earth, and scientists had to use sonar equipment to find them. They don't like to leave the dark depths and are likely to be afraid of the sound of any ship. So, that should squash the squid as a suspect.
Doggerland? No, it's not a country of dogs, as you probably first thought. It's a land the size of Great Britain in the north of Europe. But don't bother trying to find it on the map of the old continent. Your search will come back empty. Doggerland hasn't existed for thousands of years. But where was it exactly? And did humans live here? Scientists are doing their best to answer these questions. Let's start with the name. In the 1990s, a British archaeologist named the area Doggerland after Dogger Bank, a sandbank some 60 miles off the east coast of England. The word probably comes from Dutch. It was used for a fishing boat with 2 masts. Makes sense, since today, the North Sea is a rich fishing area. But thousands of years ago, People living here had a different diet. Some 12,000 years ago, the last major ice age was slowly reaching its end. Doggerland didn't feature seawater, but marshlands, lagoons, forests, and gently sloping hills. At that time, Britain and Ireland weren't islands. They sat deep inland. You could set off in Denmark and walk all the way to the north of Scotland. There was a system of rivers that emptied themselves in the North Sea. Back then, it was more of a channel that separated Doggerland from Norway. The rivers were different too. The Thames flowed into the Rhine. The ancient river they formed flowed into the place of today's English Channel and emptied itself into the Atlantic Ocean. Doggerland even featured a lake. There were some glaciers as well, but the land was still inhabitable. So who lived there? There were communities of hunter-gatherers from the Middle Stone Age. This was the time of human history when our ancestors mastered chipped stone tools. They used these stones with sharp edges for spears and arrowheads. This came in handy at Doggerland, which was the richest hunting area in all of Europe. It could have easily been the most populated region in the northwestern part of the continent. The hunters' prey likely consisted of reindeer, mammoths, oxen, wild pigs, brown bears, wolves, and many other species. In short, nobody went hungry here. Meat wasn't the only thing on the menu. Ancient residents of Doggerland collected hazelnuts and berries. They lived in wooden huts. They built them close to rivers, and they even constructed their settlements on hills. Remember Dogger Bank? It now sits underwater, but it used to be a mountainous region. Doggerland must have been prime real estate in prehistoric times. Its total surface area was over 18,000 miles, but things were about to go under, literally. The last ice age was ending. All the water trapped in glaciers and ice sheets started to melt. You experience this process firsthand every time you order a cold drink. Even if you drink it bottoms up, after a while, the glass is full again. Why? Because the ice cubes have melted. Think of Doggerland as that glass. The sea levels started rising quickly. Every century, the sea flooded from 3 to 6 feet of dry land. Just imagine what this would mean today. Miami's elevation is just over 6 feet. The city would be flooded in less than 100 years. But there was one event that speeded things up. The Storegga slides were a series of submarine landslides in the Norwegian Sea thousands of years ago. And what happens when huge chunks of Earth shift suddenly underwater? Gigantic waves. You probably know what a tsunami is. Doggerland was likely pounded by several of them. They were so powerful that researchers believe they washed away Great Britain's land bridge to the rest of the continent. All that was left of Doggerland was an island the size of Wales. Scientists estimate that the waves of this ancient tsunami were at least 40 feet high. Some 6,000 years ago, Doggerlanders were on the move. They were migrating to higher grounds, England and the Netherlands in their case. The ironic part is that when we literally translate the name of the country of Netherlands into English, we get lower lands. But thousands of years ago, this was higher ground for hunter-gatherers escaping the flood. Once it was all over, the continent of Europe got the shape we easily recognize today. But Doggerland was nowhere to be seen. It's been sitting under the waves of the North Sea for 8,200 years. Does the idea of Doggerland remind you of a more famous case of a submerged land? The lost city of Atlantis comes straight to mind. But there is an important difference. Atlantis is only a legend. Everything we know about it comes from the writings of the Greek philosopher Plato. Scientists have been searching for Atlantis for a long time. And, up to this day, they can't even agree where exactly it was. Theories range from the Mediterranean to even Antarctica. Doggerland is not a myth. Everything science knows about this lost land comes from hard evidence. In 1931, a fishing boat was doing its thing off the coast of Norfolk in England. At the time, the crew would drag a net along the sea floor, sweeping everything in its path. And they caught something more than fish. It was peat. Like the stuff we find in Alaska and in Ireland. But what was it doing at the bottom of the North Sea? It didn't belong there, because seawater destroys peat. There was only one possible explanation. The area must have been dry land at some point in history. The final proof was that the peat contained a harpoon spear point, a sure sign of human activity. The idea wasn't new, though. Since the Middle Ages, there has been talk of submerged land with underwater forests. In 1913, a British geologist came forward with the idea of an undersea world in this part of Europe. Scientific evidence kept piling up. Local fishermen started pulling out human-made tools and animal bones. Researchers dated them to be around 9,000 years old. But the deep, murky waters of the North Sea made it impossible to send down divers. One archaeologist noted that they knew more about the surface of the moon than what lay at the bottom of this relatively shallow sea. The discovery of oil in the area in the 1960s was a real game changer. Companies from the industry provided seismic survey data to scientists. This helped them piece together the full image of what Doggerland used to look like. Computer models soon produced images of river valleys, coastlines, freshwater lakes, and hills. There are even footprints of nomadic tribes preserved on the sea floor. Today, marine biologists are using magnetic fields to map out this lost underwater world. But Doggerland isn't the only place on Earth that went under the waves. Beringia is another lost world of global importance. This used to be a land bridge between Asia and North America. It got its name from the Bering Strait. It is 53 miles wide at its narrowest point. But until the end of the last ice age, this was dry land that our human ancestors called home. Genetic evidence shows that Native Americans lived in Beringia for some 15,000 years. If you want to imagine what this land looked like, think of present-day Arctic Alaska. It was a shrub tundra. There were also small willows and birches. Sorry, no woolly mammoths. Large grazing animals simply wouldn't have had enough food in Beringia, though there were probably elk and bighorn sheep in the area. But the Ice Age wouldn't last forever. Like in Doggerland, sea levels started to rise. This happened some 13,000 years ago. It wasn't all bad news, though. Scientific evidence suggests that around this time, people started moving south. They left the slowly sinking Beringia and crossed over into Alaska. From there, they populated both Americas. These were the ancestors of Native American tribes.
The concrete of gigantic construction is cracking, barely keeping thousands of tons of water under control. That's when a tiny quake shakes the ground. It becomes a game changer. The old dam gives up. An enormous amount of water dashes through the rapidly growing ruptures, pressing on the crumbling wall of stone. Another moment, and the huge dam disappears among powerful waterfalls rushing toward the village down in the valley. When a large dam hits 50 years old, it reaches its alert age. But it's basically a warning that maintaining the dam is going to get much harder, and the risk factor starts going up. A recent study by the UN Institute for Water, Environment and Health discovered that the UK and Japan have the most dams in this alert age category. No wonder. In both countries, the average dam is over 100 years old. If you, like me, are wondering why so many dams are getting old at the same time, the answer is pretty simple. Back in the middle of the 20th century, there was a massive dam building boom. In the late 1950s through the 1970s, countries built over 1,100 dams every year. But after 1990, the construction frenzy slowed down. No more than 500 new dams appeared every year, and since 2000, this number has dropped even more, to below 300. But the huge problem is that many of the dams built during that mid-century boom are all aging at the same time, and a lot of countries are facing infrastructure problems at the moment. Because what happens when these dams get too old? If they're not maintained, they're likely to start to fail, and that's a real disaster, both for water supplies and safety. It's like a ginormous water-based game of Jenga. And like in the real thing, we need to make sure those pieces don't fall. A disaster like the one we're talking about happened to the Bancha Dam built in 1952. This structure collapsed in 1975 after catastrophic rains from Typhoon Nina, leading to the loss of up to 240,000 lives. One of the reasons was the dam's poor design. It wasn't built to withstand extreme conditions. So, when the region faced unprecedented downpours, the dam overflowed and collapsed. I bet you're now super eager to know whether that dam near your home is going to fail. Well, if you find it on our list of the world's most dangerous dams, maybe it's time to relocate. The Hoover Dam is one of the highest dams in the USA, standing on the Colorado River at the border between Nevada and Arizona. Towering at over 726 feet, it's a stunning sight, as well as a powerhouse of energy. Its base is as thick as 2 soccer fields are long, and each spillway can handle the volume of water that flows over Niagara Falls. But experts warn that if the gigantic Hoover Dam breaks down, it'll most likely lead to catastrophic consequences, putting millions of lives at risk. The problem is, the dam is getting old. Plus, it's located in a seismically active area. The Almendra Dam is the highest dam in Spain. It was constructed between 1963 and 1970, and its main purpose is to control the flow of the river Tormes. This dam is no joke. Just a small manipulation could unleash a wave of destruction, so it's actually a serious concern for those living downstream. The Jinping Dam, often referred to as the Jinping First Cascade, is the tallest dam in the world. Its height is 1,001 feet. You'll find it in China. It was constructed to regulate the flow of the Yelong River. This structure carries immense responsibility, producing between 16 and 18 billion kilowatt hours annually. The average US household consumes about 11,000 kilowatt hours per year. It means that the energy produced by the Jinping hydropower station is enough to supply around 1.6 million households. The Kariba Dam is a colossal structure built on the Zambezi River between Zambia and Zimbabwe. Multiple authorities carry out its maintenance, but according to reports, if repairs are not conducted as soon as possible, the dam could lead to terrible destruction in the surrounding regions. It's crucial to keep an eye on this giant. The Mosul Dam is one of the most dangerous dams in the world. It's constructed of loose mud instead of concrete. This design mishap has led to ongoing erosion. The mud gets washed away by the river slowly and steadily. People work around the clock to repair and maintain the dam, but it's still a crucial site of concern. The Idukki Dam, located in Kerala, India, is a magnificent double curvature arch dam standing on the Periyar River. It's one of the highest arch dams in Asia, and it holds a huge volume of water. If a problem occurs at this dam, the consequences will be tragic for large areas. Such a disaster is likely to wipe out countless lives. So, the upkeep of the dam is crucial for everyone's safety. The Three Gorges Dam in China is one of the largest dams in the world and the world's biggest hydroelectric power station, completed in 2012. The dam is nearly 600 feet tall and stretches for 7,660 feet. That's more than half the width of Manhattan. The construction is so huge and powerful that experts say it's even had serious impacts on Earth itself. For example, affecting the rotation of our planet. However great it is, this dam poses a serious risk to the environment and safety. For one thing, it was built in an earthquake-prone area. Yikes. Plus, sediment buildup in the reservoir might make the construction less stable. Also, when they were building this dam, they had to relocate over 1 million people and significantly change the ecosystem. Famous for its beauty, the Monticello Dam in the USA attracts thousands of visitors each year. One of the reasons people are so eager to come there is its captivating glory hole. Indeed, at first sight, it may look like a picturesque feature. But in reality, this glory hole is actually a doorway to danger. It's basically a giant concrete funnel sticking up out of the dam. When the lake's surface level rises over 440 feet above sea level, which is close to overflowing the dam, the water starts draining out through the funnel as if from a bathtub. It creates a hypnotizing swirl, but you wouldn't want to get too close and get lost in the process. Nestled on the Columbia River in Washington, the Grand Coulee Dam has been powering the Pacific Northwest since 1942. It contains nearly 12 million cubic yards of concrete, which is enough to build a sidewalk 4 feet wide and 4 inches thick and wrap it twice around the equator. But this magnificent structure has some worries too. It's an aging structure, and at over 80 years old, it needs lots of TLC. It's located in a seismically active zone, which brings its stability into question. The Kurobe Dam in Japan is a stunning 610 feet tall. It was finished in 1963, so the structure is already pretty old. Japan's earthquakes makes this dam a bit nervous too. And last but not least, the area is prone to heavy rainfall. Intense rain might put extra pressure on the structure. On the Indus River, the Tarbela Dam is the largest earth-filled dam in the world. It was completed in 1976. Its issues include sediment buildup, which reduces its storage capacity. Plus, climate change has altered water flow, threatening the stability of the dam. The main reason we build dams is for irrigation. They help get water to our crops, and a whopping 40% of the food we eat around the globe depends on these big water-holding structures. Next on the list is hydropower. Dams are like giant batteries, turning flowing water into electricity. Then we have water supply, flood control, and even such fun activities as boating and fishing. But since dams are getting older, something needs to be done to protect people living close to them. The US is leading the way in something called dam removal, having taken down more than 1,200 dams in the last 30 years. Old dams are not only risky, but also expensive to maintain, so taking them down is often the smartest and cheapest move.
Name a desert. Let me guess. Sahara? Well, actually, no matter which one you thought of, I'm sure of one thing. It's located somewhere below this line. See, when we hear the word deserts, we usually picture dry, sandy, blazing hot places, and there's not a single one of those above 45 degrees north latitude, or below 45 degrees south. In the south, that kind of makes sense. I mean, if you leave out Antarctica, there's not a whole lot of land down there. But things are different above 45 degrees north. There are tons of land. Countries like Canada, France, the United Kingdom, and a bunch of others. And still, not a single desert. Actually, not a hot desert. Most of the major hot deserts are up in the northern hemisphere, near the tropics of Cancer and Capricorn. And the hottest ones are usually found between 15 and 30 degrees north or south of the equator. Just like the Sahara, where average high temperatures can reach up to 104 degrees Fahrenheit. Together, hot deserts cover almost 15% of the Earth's land area. But if our planet is packed with them, why doesn't a single one appear above this line? I mean, the 45 degrees north latitude. I'll explain. Let's divide Earth into 5 main zones. The polar regions are located at both ends, north and south. Right here, we have the 2 temperate zones. And finally, right in the middle of the globe is the tropical zone. Now, the line we're talking about sits in the temperate zone, in a colder area. Because the farther you go away from the equator, the colder it gets. Actually, the average annual temperature drops about 1.2 degrees Fahrenheit for every degree of latitude you move north in the northern hemisphere. And cold weather is the main reason hot deserts don't form above this line. It turns out that as you move farther north from the equator, the sun's rays hit the Earth at a more slanted angle. That spreads the solar energy over a larger area, which means less heat is concentrated in one spot. Basically, these regions just don't get as hot. And it's one of the reasons why countries like Finland are much colder than Colombia, for example. Another reason temperatures are lower in this zone has to do with something called albedo. Basically, this term refers to the amount of sunlight that a surface reflects back. Let me give you an example. Every surface on Earth both reflects and absorbs sunlight, but in different amounts. Take snow, for example. It can reflect up to 90% of the sunlight that hits it and only absorbs about 10%. That's what gives snow a high albedo. And it's totally different with sand, which has a lower albedo. In places like the Kalahari Desert, down in southern Africa, it's about a 50-50 situation. Most of the year, roughly 50% of the sunlight gets reflected around there, and the other 50% is absorbed. The heat absorbed by the sand is part of why it gets so hot in dry places like deserts. I mean, hot deserts. Simply put, sand soaks up more heat, while snow reflects most of it. This is one of the reasons why snowy areas stay much cooler. So the closer you get to the polar zones, the easier it is for sunlight to be reflected instead of absorbed. And that helps explain why there aren't any hot deserts around those parts. Then, we also have atmospheric patterns. Let's just say that the air patterns change a lot once you go above that 45-degree line. That's because this region is controlled by a wind belt known as the Ferrel Cell. Okay, so Earth has three main convection cells. You can think of them as big loops of moving air. Warm air rises, cools down, sinks, and then the cycle repeats. At the top and bottom of the planet, we have the polar cells. Right in the middle are the Hadley cells, and sandwiched between those two are the Ferrel cells. Now, everything that happens between these three cells can get a little complicated, but for today, the main thing to know is this. In those middle zones, the warm air that comes from the tropics meets the cold air from the polar regions. So, Ferrel cells play a big role in moving heat from the equator up toward the poles. This flow of warm air helps smooth out the temperature differences between the tropics and the polar regions, and that's what shapes the weather in places like North America, Europe, and parts of Asia. In the mid-latitudes, the Ferrel cell keeps the air moving around so much that hot, dry air doesn't really get a chance to settle. So, those regions end up with more moisture, more clouds, and even storms, rather than dry, desert-like weather. That's why you don't usually see hot deserts around 45 degrees latitude. Basically, what I'm trying to say is that the Ferrel cell makes the weather less stable. And that's very different from what happens in the Sahara Desert, for example. Over there, temperatures don't change all that much throughout the year. Just expect it to be hot. When you put all these factors together, it helps explain why hot deserts are mostly limited to the middle parts of the Earth, and why you'll never find a Sahara or Kalahari-style desert in places like Canada or Sweden. But that doesn't mean we don't have any deserts above the 45-degree line. Turns out, deserts don't always have to be hot and sandy. In fact, they can look like this. Yep, I'm talking about the Arctic. Because the actual definition of a desert isn't just some hot, dry, sandy place, it's really any area that gets very little precipitation. In other words, an area where it doesn't rain much. And it usually gets no more than 10 inches of precipitation per year. So, no matter if the weather is hot or cold, deserts are really dry places with hardly any vegetation around. That makes it pretty tough for animals and plants to live in those environments. If you think about it, that means the biggest desert on Earth is Antarctica. It covers about 5.5 million square miles, just endless ice flats as far as the eye can see. It's also the coldest desert on the planet, even colder than the Arctic, which is the other polar desert. Temperatures there can drop as low as minus 128.2 degrees Fahrenheit. If you look at the Earth, about 33% of its land is desert. Now, pay close attention to the ones located between 15 and 30 degrees latitude. These are called tropical deserts. But can you notice something curious about their locations? Most of them are found on the western edges of continents. And there's a reason for that. Actually, 4 main reasons. First, the winds that bring rain usually blow from the east. When they move across the land, they drop most of the rain early on. By the time these winds reach the west side, they're dry, so there's no rain left for those areas. That already makes things pretty dry. Second, in the western margins of continents, the air usually goes down instead of up. When air goes down, it gets warmer and can't form clouds. So again, no rain. Third, if there are mountains nearby, they can block the rain too. One side of the mountain gets all the moisture, and the other side, called the rain shadow, stays dry. And lastly, the ocean near these places often has cold water. Cold water cools the air above it and makes it calm, so clouds don't form easily. No clouds means no rain. So when you put all of that together, it helps explain why those tropical deserts seem to prefer one side of the continent more than the other.
You have friends over for dinner. You set your drink on the counter and go help your friend set out some desserts. When you get back, you notice the liquid in your cup. It's sloshing around and the ice cubes look like ships on a rough sea. Now you feel it too. On the ceiling, the chandelier is swinging like mad. Then you hear someone scream, "Earthquake!" The house and everything in it is rocking back and forth. You try to run for cover, but the shaking keeps you stuck in place, fighting to keep your balance. The cabinets look possessed, and glasses and dishes fly out and smash on the floor. The bookshelves topple over, and everything hanging on the walls sways and falls off. You duck under the dining room table, trying not to get hurt on all those broken dishes. Yeah, you've been through earthquakes before, but none like this. Checking your phone? Typical, no signal. You can't believe what's about to happen. The screams get louder, and suddenly the whole house collapses. The biggest earthquake ever recorded happened in Chile in 1960. Disaster came in the afternoon, just when everyone was out enjoying themselves. To cause serious, life-changing damage, you need to have a magnitude of around 7 or so on the Richter scale. This one was 9.5. This part of Chile is smack dab on the so-called Ring of Fire, the most active volcanic and seismic area in the world along the Pacific Rim. The initial shaking lasted around 10 minutes, and after 2 days, many aftershocks were still strong enough to set off a volcano in the south of the country. But that's not where it ended. The earthquake unleashed a series of tidal waves all over the Pacific Ocean, with some reaching over 80 feet high. The waves and earthquake were so strong that they even affected Hawaii, Japan, and the Philippines. It caused around $500 million $1960 worth of damage. Many were left homeless. Much of their infrastructure was smashed too. Buildings as far as the eye could see were toppled, and debris piled everywhere. Scientists estimate that this earthquake was so powerful, it shifted the Earth's axis, making our days 1.26 microseconds shorter. That might not seem like a lot, but think about it. Just one natural disaster was strong enough to make time move. Many of the coastal cities were flattened and floods were widespread. The economy spiraled downward. According to studies, if this earthquake happened today, it caused more than $20 billion in damages. So what would happen if an earthquake twice that size hit without warning? For starters, you'd likely feel the effects even further away. Tidal waves wouldn't just hit the coasts of Japan and the Philippines. They would move even further to China, Korea, Vietnam, and even Australia. And those waves would be significantly higher than 80 feet, perhaps double that. That's like 8 giraffes piled on top of each other, surfing your way. If you lived by the coast, you'd notice the waves. If you saw the water recede way back so you could practically see where all the fish call home, you'd know it was time to run. Chances are that a tsunami's heading your way. Say it really happens. You're caught under the wreckage, not knowing what's going on. You manage to free yourself and escape to the fresh air. And you're not alone, because all the houses in the neighborhood have turned into piles of bricks and rubble. The bridges have also collapsed, leaving people stranded on either side. You look around, dust yourself off, and rush to find help. Fire trucks and ambulances drive between the broken-down cars and rubble. You try to make it to your car, but the aftershocks are still hitting, and you're getting tossed to the sidewalk. With all the cell towers down, you can't call anyone on your phone. Your knees are shaking, but you manage to power through. Once you reach your car, You see it crushed under a boulder, like a giant soda can. You continue on foot and eventually reach downtown. It looks as if some giant got angry and knocked all the buildings down. You push forward and try to see if you can find some help. Without warning, your phone vibrates. You check it and see 1,000 notifications about a 20-magnitude earthquake. You're still shaking, but that's all you. The ground is still for now. Uh-oh. You hear something in the distance, racing towards you. To your right, you see tidal waves as tall as buildings charging at you. Still in shock, not knowing what to do, you now come to your senses and run. You don't even know which way to go. There's a tsunami right behind you, and in front of you are broken down buildings with rocks and concrete still falling everywhere. Wait, there's a building that's somehow still standing. You need to get on top of that thing. You reach the elevator, but it's jammed. Not surprising. You bolt up the stairs as fast as you can, tripping on broken glass and plaster, but always managing to get back up. You look out a window and see the water. It's so close. You're nearly at the top. A few more flights and… whoosh. The water forces its way into the building and drags you down at least 2 floors. You can barely see anything. Still, you know you must swim up. But the water keeps forcing you downwards. After about 30 seconds, you manage to swim your way out and continue climbing to the top. You scramble to the top floor and collapse on the roof. You're safe for now. The tidal wave is still going strong, plowing its way through the ravaged city center. Your phone is now waterlogged and useless. You have a perfect 360-degree view of your town covered in water and debris. The ground starts to shake again. Maybe you'll just sit around until this is all over, waiting for the rescue helicopter. But then, a loud explosion that almost breaks your eardrums shakes the ground even more. Off in the distance, smoke is rising, and soon it covers the entire sky. Darkness hides the morning sun. That's when you can see lava shooting up into the air and landing nearby. The lava forms into a river, flowing its way into town block by block. With this much seismic movement and the high intensity of the earthquake, the world's tectonic plates have shifted so that magma is pushing its way to the surface. From the earth, steam begins to vent. Then the heat hits you. You see the magma cover the ground like a blanket, eating up every car in its way. What's worse is that the magma is melting the foundations of the buildings that managed to withstand the earthquake and the tsunami. The buildings in the distance are now sinking and collapsing into the raging lava pool that's replaced your town. One by one, every building descends. That means, uh-oh, the building where you're standing is also swaying. It's about to fail. That's when you see the light. You look up and see a helicopter above in the distance. You wave your arms, run around, jump, anything to get noticed. And it works. The chopper makes a few circles and finally drops you a rope ladder. As you're lifted in the chopper, you take a good look at the world below you as it wriggles around like noodles in a strainer. You land a few miles out and are immediately treated by a doctor in an emergency triage center. You were one of the lucky ones. A year later, the tsunami water has receded. The lava that flowed inland has cooled, but all that magma permanently changed the ground below it, and the whole town is gone. The disaster has thrown the entire country into a financial nightmare that'll last decades. It takes months to survey the town, making sure there's no dangerous electrical wires or busted gas pipes anywhere. They're rebuilding your town farther inland from where the old one was. In other towns, they rebuild directly over the ruins. In others, they just decide to move everyone to a nearby city.